Welcome back, crew. It's been out of order, but today we are going to be going over how to play the Fate core system by Evil Hat Games, taking you in through the ins and outs of how to resolve their dice mechanics, how to handle aspects, how to handle fate points, pretty much everything you need to know to show up as a player to the table and feel confident playing the Fate system, or as a game master getting a better understanding of the core mechanics. And the nice thing is, as I said, we're out of order on this one. So if you want to go through and watch our recording of our actual play of Fate and see these mechanics in action, I'll throw a link down in the description. Go check it out. It was a fun session, game mastered by Spirit or Agni Jeet from Pandemonium, if you're following along there. And it was just a blast to get to play that one and get to sit in the player's chair for it. Yeah, let's dive right in. And two things I want to touch on right at the top too, is just kind of some couple pieces to know about the Fate system before we get into the core mechanics. The first is it's a generalist system. And basically what that means is designed to fit any type of setting, story, gameplay style, genre that the players and the game master are looking to tell. So one of the things you'll notice is a lot of the mechanics are fairly open-ended, or can kind of be applied to a number of different situations, and that's by design. It's meant to be tweaked by the players and the game master to kind of fit the setting, to fit the genre, to fit the type of story they're looking to tell. And on top of that, point number two, it's a narrative system. So it is a little bit lighter on mechanics, more focused on kind of fostering the narrative and that conversation between players and game master, and kind of keeping that portion moving and not being bogged down by the mechanics. So, two things I wanted to keep in mind as we kind of go through and highlight some of these pieces. So, biggest thing we're going to do is we're going to go through how to resolve the dice and what dice you need to play Fate. Fate's super easy. You just need 46. Now you can do typical 46 you have at home. They also have fate die that are kind of set up for the system to make it a little bit easier, because you'll see there are three symbols that go along with the dice. You've got the minus, which if you're using a regular d6 would be rolling a 1 through 2. You've got the blank, 3 through 4. And then you got the plus, which on a regular d6 would be a 5 through 6. So anytime you try to take an action, which will highlight those actions in a moment, you're going to roll the 46 and then calculate what type of bonus you get from that, or potentially minus as well, since you got those negatives, adding in them. You'll subtract the minuses, add in the pluses, and get that end result. The nice thing is, whenever you're rolling, you're typically going to be adding in one of your skills. So you're going to add your skills to whatever that final result is from the pluses and minuses of your fate dice. So fairly straightforward on that side. And then when you get that end result, the fate system has this cool piece called the ladder. And basically, what the ladder is going to do is show you kind of where you land on what you're trying to do. So if you got a +8 at the end, that'd be a legendary roll. That's something that's very hard to do. People will be telling stories about it for years to come, in whatever game world that you're in. And all the way down to a -2, which is a terrible roll. Which, as you saw, there's minuses in the fate die. So if you roll pretty badly, which I did on a couple of mine, you can get into the negatives pretty easily. So with this, there's two different ways that you're typically going to be rolling with fate, or kind of going after your objective. You could be doing an opposed roll or a roll where the game master sets the threshold. Threshold rolls are pretty easy. The game master is going to say, hey, whatever you're trying to do, you're going to need X result on the ladder. It could say, hey, we need a good result on the ladder, so a +3, and then you're going to go through and roll that and see if you can accomplish it. Sometimes, though, you're going to be going up directly against someone, and then that's going to be where you and the game master roll, and you're going to count, kind of compare how that's went and see how, and kind of setting the threshold with the opponent's roll. So if I rolled as the game master and I got a average roll, and you rolled as the player and you got a fair roll, you would be able to succeed, and you're gonna get a one shift. And that kind of goes into the next piece. So shifts are things you have to keep track of with this system. For opposed rolls, it kind of as we went through there, but for a regular threshold roll where the game master said, "Hey, you got to get that +4," if you get a +7, you'd have three shifts, because basically anything above the number that you were supposed to get are going to count as a shift for you. fairly straightforward, and shifts kind of vary depending on what type of role or action you're taking, or what type of skills you even may be invoking at the time. So you want to keep track of them because sometimes they can give you an extra bonus on whatever you're doing. So now that we've went through the dice system and kind of the rolling mechanics, we're going to go through and touch on the outcomes and the actions associated with this game. And one thing, viewers, if you're following along at home, you're going to kind of see that we're bouncing back and forth in the book quite a bit. I will say minor thorn for Fate is I don't think it's not a raid in my favorite kind of way for learning the system. So I'm hopefully going to give a slightly better way as we go through. Just going to hit the core pieces as I think you need to know them. So with that, we're going to go through outcomes as well as actions. So there's four ranks in Fate: from fail, high, success, and succeed with style. For a lot of these, they're fairly straightforward. Fail is you're going to either lose at a pole's roll or be roll below the threshold. Uh, high, you're going to meet that threshold. Success, you're going to be above it. Succeed with style, you're going to be three shifts above it. So keep that in mind as we go through the four core actions of the Fate system and kind of how they'll interact. So the first action within their system is overcome. This is going to be your bread and butter. This is your kind of your typical skill roll. This would be the one that you're going to be utilizing most often in your average session. So with this, you're going to kind of utilize the mechanics we talked on for rolling, and you're going to keep track of what type of success you get. And this can be something like you're trying to, like an R game, when I try to kind of utilize one of my skills. I'm trying to think of the skill. Oh, investigating. When we were using one of the skills, we're investigating the clue that was left at the crime scene. This is when you'd be using kind of your skills or the overcome role. And you're trying to either beat that threshold, or if, in case you're going up against another NPC, it could be that opposed role. So with this, if you fail on this one, you're basically whatever you're trying to do either won't happen, or you could succeed with a serious cost. And with a serious cost, those would be kind of conversations between you and your game master to see kind of how that's affected you. It could be even with consequences. It kind of depends, or a stress point. It just depends on where you and the game master kind of feel that will come through it. If you tie on this one, you're going to get a boost that you could bring. Sorry, you're going to get a minor success on that one. You may be able to achieve your goal, but not everything that you wanted to, or have a minor cost associated with it. With this one, for success, you're basically going to, if you get a success on your roll, you will achieve it without any cost. And if you succeed with style, you're going to get a boost in addition to whatever outcome you were looking for. And we'll highlight what a boost is in a second. So that's like the core kind of fate loop or kind of gameplay role. You'll be utilizing that pretty often in the session. Moving from that, we're going to go into create advantage. I think this is one of my favorite pieces of Fate. 'Cause I think this is a really cool way to build mechanics to something that players often want to do. Kind of doing something cool with either their skills, their abilities, or kind of what makes their character unique. And have it impact the battlefield and have both themselves and the other players in the group be able to utilize that to mechanical advantage. So create an advantage is your characters can do something that's going to be unique to you. Using an example from our actual play, my character was fighting a nuts, who was able to create shadows. It's kind of her main superpower. My character was able to kind of utilize his solar powers to create a bright light, which made it more difficult for Nyx to be able to utilize her powers. And basically, what this is going to do, in mechanical terms, is creating advantage. If you're successful, is going to create a situational advantage that you and your other players can invoke to get a bonus to your rolls. And we're going to go through what invoking means a little bit later, but it's kind of it's the cool piece that you'll be able to keep track of. So, a couple things how this works. So, if you fail your roll, if you try to create whatever that advantage was, and you fail, it doesn't happen. And if you're going up against a hostile creature, they're going to get a free invoke against you. If you tie, it also doesn't happen, but you're going to get a free boost that you can utilize later in the session. Now, if you succeed, you're going to be able to create that advantage. It's going to happen in the narrative. The nice thing is it's going to create a free invoke. So this is a big thing to keep in mind because free invokes are nice. They don't take fate points, and we're going to kind of go in just a second, explain in depth what invoking is. And if you CC'd with style, so three over the threshold, you're going to be able to get two invokes that either you or other players can utilize. So fairly straightforward on that side, but I think this is just really one of the things that makes Fate unique. And I think it's their cool mechanics. I really wanted to kind of give it a little shine on that side. The next two actions are going to be related to combat. It's going to be attack and defend. These are pretty straightforward and they're almost inverse in each other too. So keep in mind when I say for some of the attacks, because they're going to come into play on the opposite side for defend. So if you fail an attack, basically there's going to be no harm dealt to the character you're going against. And you potentially could get side effects from the opposition succeeding in their defend check in case, depending on what skills or abilities that player has. If you tie, the attacker gains a boost. Defender doesn't gain anything. If you succeed on the attack roll, it's going to count. You're going to hit the character, and depending on how many shifts you gain, that character is going to get stress or consequences equal to those shifts. So fairly straightforward there. And then critical success follows that same line. Except if you wanted to, you could spend one of your shifts to get a free boost. And then looking at defense, it's the same pretty much, but in reverse. If you fail defense, you're going to take stress and consequences equal to your opponent's shifts. If you tie, your opponent gets a boost since they're the attacker. If you succeed, nothing happens. If you crit succeed, you're able to get a free boost as you kind of turn the tables in a moment. So those are the core actions for Fate. Those are the big pieces that you're going to need to keep in mind as you're playing to kind of interact with the system. Now that we've touched on those core core mechanics, we're going to go through and go how invoking works. Because invoking aspects are a core piece of the mechanical play for Fate. So it's something you'll want to keep in mind. So there's two ways you can invoke aspects. It's all from our great advantage. There's a way to get free invoke. So free invokes, you're still invoking whatever aspect or situational aspect that was set up by the advantage. They don't cost a fate point. Typical invokes are going to be utilizing one of your aspects, whether it be one of your character aspects, one of the situational aspects, or something that's part of the game. And we're going to go through what those aspects are and how they come into play in a moment. But you're going to invoke them utilizing a free fate point, and this is going to do a couple of things for you. You can either get a +2 on your current roll. So if you've already rolled, you can go through and say, "Hey, I need a little extra bonus here. I'm going to invoke this aspect and get that extra +2 to whatever you've tried to do." You could also say, "Hey, I'm going to spend a fate point, invoke this aspect," and was it each time, whether it be a free or a fate point invoked aspect, you've got to link it back to whether your character, situational, or game aspect. So you have to gotta kind of display how it's going to fit into the narrative. And once you do so, you can either get that +2 or you can re-roll, or you could either add or minus a +2 to another character's roll if your aspects would support what you're trying to do there. So fairly straightforward on that side. Invoking is something you're going to be doing quite a bit, whether it be free or the fate point invokes. So I wanted to make sure we called that out as we look through. So now that we've talked about invoking, now that we've talked about the core aspects, we're going to hit what fate points are. So fate points, you're going to start with the amount equal to your refresh score on your character sheet. You'll see that kind of highlighted over here. Your refresh score is typically going to be 3, but it can be a little bit lower or even sometimes higher depending on how many stunts you took. And with those fate points, you can go through and do a couple of things with them. So we've already touched on one piece, going through and invoking your kind of your aspect on that side or evoking an aspect that you may have access to. The other piece you can do with this is you can also go through and define a story element. So with that, you can kind of get a little bit of narrative control. Rewrite a detail of the story to kind of suit to your advantage, or kind of just make the story more interesting. And something that'll be kind of a conversation with your game master because it's not a button you can push to win, but something they can kind of go through to give your players or give your characters an advantage, but while increasing the drama and kind of fitting into the narrative. The next big thing that you can do is invoke a powerful stunt. Stunts are associated with your skills, and you can pick multiple of those at character creation. Invoking them with a fate point give you a little bit of an extra bonus, or it does something a little bit beyond what that skill could typically do, and just gives you a really cool tool to kind of impact the narrative. So with those in mind, the next big thing we're going to touch on is compel. So compelling is where your game master can invoke one of your aspects against you. So this could be a consequence that you've already gotten, or it could be the double-edged sword of one of your aspects you created for your character or the situation that you're in. But the game master can invoke that and say, "Hey, at the bonus of a fate point, because no matter what, if you accept this complication, this compel, you're going to get a free fate point, but the game master is also going to have you fail or have some unintended consequences with whatever you were trying to do when they compelled you. So this is kind of a fun one where the game master gets to throw a wrench into whatever plan that you're looking to do, but you get a free fate point. Or if you say, "Hey, I really need to succeed at whatever's going on," you could spend a fate point to stop that from occurring. This is kind of a thing I like with on the game master side because this is kind of cool. These you can kind of evoke those cool story moments and really kind of bring in kind of what the players or either the situation or the character has put them into. So now that we've got that, we're going to go into the core aspects of the Fate system and kind of what each of them means. So there's a number of different aspects. The first one being game aspects. So these are going to be decided at the start of your campaign. You can even see us if you looked at the kind of the first probably 20, 30 minutes of our session. We went through and defined some of these game aspects. So these can be invoked by both the players, the game master, depending on what is going on, to kind of get that advantages as well. They can be character aspects. These are going to be more individual. These are going to be ones you decide during your character creation, uh, where pieces related directly to your guy. There could be situational aspects, which are going to be either environmental effects, context of whatever situation you're in. Creating advantages also falls into the situational aspects. These are going to be varied. They're typically only going to be involved in whatever scene you're in. So these ones should be shifting pretty often, where the game aspects and character aspects will clearly be pretty consistent game to game. And then consequences. If you get hurt, which we're going to go into a little bit later, you can have consequences to your character, and these can be invoked as well. Clearly, they'll be invoked against you by compelling or other aspects there. And then boost are kind of free aspects that come as a result, either a failed attempt or to create an advantage, or as added benefits to a success. We went through some of those ways you may get those. The nice thing with those is you get to invoke them for free, but as soon as you do, that aspect goes away. So it doesn't take a fate point to invoke. You just get to bring them in, and then whatever that boost you got from that aspect is gone. So those are the core sort of aspects of the system. The last big thing that we'll touch on before we wrap is stress as well as consequences. So you'll see there's two types of stress that you can take within the Fate core system: physical stress as well as mental stress. Uh, Typically, as a character, you're going to start off with two boxes in each field. So two mental stress, two physical stress. At any time, kind of you fail or somebody does an attack against you, your game master will let you know if this is, hey, this is a physical stress, this is a mental stress. And then you're going to count those shifts that they got a successful attack against you and mark those as boxes. Now, if you run out of boxes, this is where consequences will come into play. So like my guy, he got beat up pretty bad in one of the first encounters. It got some mentally beat up pretty bad. It got an inferiority complex compared to his more successful father of the game. So that was a moderate consequence. So basically, what's going to happen when I invoked that is I was able to -4 since moderate is a 4 shift. So I was able to -4 from the shifts that the game master rolled against me, kind of bringing that stress down that I potentially could have taken, but I had that consequence of superiority, and it's something that the game master was able to compel me on a couple times, and impacted the play. Uh, and with those, if you fill up your consequences and you see that while there's different stressors between mental and physical, there's not different consequences. So if you fill those up between mixture of physical and mental stresses, you're taken out of the action at that point. You're not dead, but you're taken out. And you'll have to you kind of reset to be able to come back and play. And that's kind of a good point too, as well. For the stresses, you can reset those at the end of a scene. For consequences, those are something that could take longer to reset and will typically be kind of a conversation between you and your game master. Sometimes just moving out of a scene can get rid of the consequence. Other times it may decrease it. And sometimes you may have to kind of work to truly get rid of that consequence, depending on how it fit into the narrative. But overall, that was a quick look at the Fate core system. Those are the core mechanics we need to know so they'll be able to play the game to kind of resolve the core aspects of the system. It just kind of gets to have some fun in the Fate world. Now, if there's anything that you think shouldn't cover that we should have shouted out for core Fate mechanics, make sure to throw those in the comments. Our next step is we're going to get our review of the system out, hopefully this weekend. So take a look at that a little bit later. And then definitely like, subscribe, shout out some things you like about the Fate core system. Check out our actual play if you want to see how these mechanics look live at the table. And stay tuned. I know it's a little bit late in January, but we're going to have a new January game of the month which we'll be announcing during our review of the Fate Core system. So definitely check that out. But overall, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with us. And until next time.